Hey guys, tonight we journey back to the real Middle Ages. No fantasy. No heroic quests, just mud, fleas, and a whole lot of discomfort. Picture this: you blink, and suddenly you're standing in the middle of a medieval village. The air smells like a mix of livestock, smoke, and something vaguely human. Chickens dart around your feet, and someone is yelling about bread being a day late. Children run by barefoot, covered in grime, and no one seems to care. There's a persistent itch in your socks already, and you haven't even sat down. You probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, what country are you in, and what time are you listening to this? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing ankle deep in what might generously be called a road. It's more like a soggy path where mud, animal waste, and yesterday's stew remnants all mingled together in a textured soup. There are no cobblestones, unless you're in a major city, which you're not. This is a peasant village and you're already drawing attention. Not the good kind. You're clean, for starters. And your clothes don't smell like yesterday's turnips. A few kids point at you. One of them throws a lump of something suspiciously soft. Mrs. Lucky You. Let's talk about your new neighbors. Roughly 50 to 100 souls packed into thatched cottages, with no glass in the windows. The buildings lean like they're tired of existing. Smoke drifts lazily from holes in roofs, because chimneys, still a luxury. And every home has its own unique aroma, symphony of mildew, wet straw, and unwashed humans. It's the medieval version of scented candles. You make your way through the village square, where a pig is enthusiastically rooting through a pile of refuse, and a woman is arguing with a man over whose goat ate whose cabbage. It's loud, chaotic, and weirdly alive. You're trying to process everything, but it's hard to think when the smell of open sewage is wafting up from the drainage system. A shallow ditch that runs between houses. It's not a great time to wear sandals. Mainstream historical fact. Most medieval villages were self-sufficient but tiny, often built around a manor and featuring a central open space for markets, announcements, and the occasional execution. Everything smelled bad. Everyone knew everyone. And everyone noticed you. You keep walking, trying not to gag every few steps. Behind you, a door slams. Someone mutters a prayer. A dog barks, though it might be a wolf-dog hybrid. Hard to tell, really. One thing's clear. You don't belong here. And people don't love that. Suspicion in the Middle Ages is basically its own form of currency. One old man offers you a bit of ale from a cracked wooden mug. You hesitate. The mug looks like it's never been washed. Still, he's smiling. You take a sip. It's warm, weak, and tastes like something that was once bread and then decided not to be. But hey, hydration. You try to hand it back politely, but he's already walked off, probably assuming you'll return it tomorrow. Joke's on him. Fringe tidbit: some medieval towns had alewives, who were known for brewing mildly alcoholic drinks in their own kitchens, often safer than the water supply, which could be deadly thanks to bacteria, parasites, and the occasional rotting animal upstream. And speaking of water, you're starting to feel thirsty again. There's a stream nearby, but remember, it's also where people wash their clothes, rinse their chamber pots, and sometimes dispose of bodies. Still feeling thirsty, you decide to find shelter, but the village inn is reserved for actual travelers like merchants or messengers of the crown. You're not that. One of the local kids suggests a hayloft, if you don't mind rats. The sun is already dipping low, and the golden light does nothing to make this place feel cozy. Shadows stretch across the crooked timber beams, and a bell rings from a church tower in the distance. Time for evening prayers. You consider following the small crowd heading that way, but someone stops you, a woman with a broom and no patience. You can't go in like that, she snaps. Take off your shoes. You comply. Bad choice. The ground is freezing and sharp with gravel. Historical debate. Historians still argue whether the average medieval peasant was actually miserable, or simply so used to discomfort that they didn't notice. What's clear is that comfort, as you know it, did not exist. The entire idea of relaxing is foreign. There's always something to fix, cook, clean, mend, or fear. Finally, you settle in behind a pile of hay. It's itchy. It smells faintly of goat. You're exhausted. The sky darkens fully, revealing stars clearer than you've ever seen. It's almost nice, until a beetle crawls across your ankle, and then something larger rustles nearby. You curl tighter, the itchy wool of your borrowed cloak wrapping around your nose, blocking some of the stench. Somewhere in the village, a woman starts singing a lullaby. It drifts through the night like smoke. You think about your bed back home, your phone, your bathroom. Too late. You're here now. Morning slaps you awake before the sun even peeks over the treetops. There's no rooster crowing. It was probably someone's dinner last night, but the village is already alive. You hear the thud of wood being chopped, the soft grunts of oxen being yoked, and the unmistakable squelch of footsteps in mud. Your stomach growls like it's threatening you. You didn't eat last night, too busy fending off beetles and trying not to sneeze from hay dust. So today's mission is food. Should be easy, right? Just ask for something. No. You wander back toward the village square, where a few locals are huddled near a pot suspended over a smoky fire. One woman stirs it with a stick that looks more suited to fencing than cooking. You approach cautiously. Her eyes flick to you, narrow, and she points at a spot on the ground. Sit. You do. She hands you a wooden bowl. It's warm, promising. Then you look inside. It's stew, kind of. The color is grayish. The smell is mostly onion, turnip, and something metallic that you really hope isn't blood. Floating on the surface is what looks like a single wilted herb leaf, possibly for decoration. You give the bowl a tentative sniff, then a cautious sip. It's not bad, it's just aggressively bland. Imagine boiled sock water with a hint of radish. Still, it's fuel. You gulp it down, trying not to taste it too much. Around you, people are eating the same thing, silently. One man burps. Another scratches under his tunic with so much vigor. You think he's trying to start a fire. Mainstream historical fact. For the average medieval peasant, meals were simple, repetitive, and deeply seasonal. Bread, porridge, pottage, a kind of vegetable stew, and ale were staples. Meat was rare and often reserved for special occasions or taken illicitly from the Lord's landhello. Poaching, as you reach the bottom of your bowl, you feel something firm. Not a potato, not a bone, it's a pebble, from the grinding stone used to crush the grain. Medieval bread, especially when made with hand-milled flour, was often laced with tiny rock fragments. Over time, this wore down people's teeth, hence the medieval smile, crooked, cracked, and conspicuously toothless. You hand the bowl back, trying to smile. The cook grunts. Was that approval? Possibly. Nearby, a man gnaws on a crust of black bread, so hard it sounds like he's chewing tree bark. You watch as he dips it in his ale, softening it just enough to not shatter a molar. You're offered a chunk. You nod politely. It's dense, sour, and somehow both dry and greasy. You chew like you're testing the structural integrity of your jaw. Fringe tidbit. Some regions used fish paste as a seasoning, fermented, pungent, and beloved by those who grew up with it. For you, it's like licking a medieval dock. You're beginning to understand why food wasn't just fuel, it was survival. You couldn't afford to be picky. Everything had to stretch. That stew you just had might have been the same pot from 2 days ago, just refreshed with water and yesterday's leftovers. If you're lucky, it wasn't thickened with stale bread soaked in milk that went off. There's also no concept of food hygiene here. The same hands that fed chickens, mucked out stalls, and butchered pigs are the ones stirring your pot. The flies don't just hover, they land, stroll, and bathe in your breakfast. And yet, people are surviving, laughing even. One man offers you a hunk of cheese wrapped in cloth. It smells like feet and feels slightly warm. Cheap, he says proudly. You take a bite. It's pungent, sharp, and somehow fizzy. Your eyes water, but you nod He beams. You just made a friend. Historians still argue whether peasants had access to a balanced diet. or lived in near-perpetual nutritional deficiency. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. Lean times were frequent, but clever villagers grew herbs foraged, and occasionally even kept bees or rabbits. You learn fast that meals aren't individual events. They're communal, dictated by rhythm and season. Breakfast, if it happens, is meager. Lunch more like midday meals, the main event. Dinner, just the last edible thing in the house before bed. No candles, no fancy forks, no Instagrammable plating. You're lucky if your food isn't crawling. Not metaphorically. Actually crawling. You help carry the pot back to one of the cottages. It's heavier than it looks. Inside, the home is a single room with a hearth, a stool, a cot, and a pile of straw in the corner where two children are playing with rocks like they're the latest tech. You're handed a turnip, raw, crunchy, somehow better than everything else you've had today. The woman nods for you to leave. Not unkindly, just practically. She has chores. You step outside into sunlight that feels unnaturally bright after the smoke. Your stomach feels fuller, but also queasy. Probably the pebble. You hear a shout, someone calling for help. A donkey is stuck in the mud. 3 men are trying to lift it out, using ropes and sheer willpower. You consider offering help, but a kid tugs your sleeve and whispers, "If you help the donkey, you share the fine when it ruins the Lord's fence." You step back. Smart choice. Food in the Middle Ages isn't about satisfaction. It's about survival. You eat what's available when it's available, and pray that no one drops dead from mold, rancid fat, or lead-glazed pottery. Your taste buds will recover. Probably your intestines. Remains to be seen later. As you wander behind the cookhouse, you catch a glimpse of the pantry, a shelf with onions, garlic, dried beans, and a jug of something bubbling. You're told it's vinegar, or cider, possibly both. You politely decline a sip. By nightfall, the stew pot is bubbling again. You don't ask what's in it. You just accept the bowl. You think you'll sleep better tonight. After all, you've got food in your belly sort of, and you've made it a full day without being arrested, exiled, or accused of sorcery. That's a win. Now you just need a place to lay your weary, pebble-digested head. The kind old man from yesterday, remember? The one with the questionable ale. Nods toward his cottage. You follow him in. It's a single-room home with a slanted roof, walls made of wattle and daub, and one tiny, greasy window that lets in about as much light as a closed eyelid. There's a fire smoldering low on the hearth, and a stew pot bubbling gently, again. You're beginning to suspect the pot is eternal. He points to the corner, where a mound of straw, burlap sacks, and what might be an old cloak have been arranged into something that vaguely resembles a bed. You take your place, trying not to wince. The straw pokes through immediately. No sheets, no padding, just bundles of broken grass, and a few deeply committed bugs. The pillow, a rolled-up tunic that smells like it lost a war. You lie back. You regret it instantly. Mainstream historical fact. Most peasants slept on straw mattresses, laid directly on the floor, or on low wooden frames. Beds weren't private, they were shared by family members, and even livestock in colder months. Blankets were rare, and clothes doubled as sleepwear. You shift, trying to find a soft spot. There isn't one. Something small and hairy darts across. Your ankle, you yelped quietly. The old man chuckles in his sleep. You consider that maybe it was a mouse, or maybe something less adorable. Either way, it's now a roommate. The fire crackles. Smoke trickles upward and just hangs there, no chimney. Remember. You cough quietly. Your lungs are getting a workout. Your eyes sting, but it's warm. That's something. Then the noises start. Fringe tidbit. Medieval nights weren't quiet. Without insulation or solid doors, every cough, every owl hoot, every fart, 2 cottages down, becomes part of your lullaby. Also, the livestock snore. A woman down the lane is wailing softly. Whether it's grief, madness, or a toothache, no one investigates. A dog barks, then whines. A man yells. Something crashes. You flinch. Still, exhaustion creeps in. Your body is aching from walking in bad shoes. Your stomach is weirdly both full and nauseated. and the day's grime has seeped into your pores. You close your eyes, then you wake up. It's still night. But now something is biting you. You scratch. Bad. Move. Now it itches worse. You get up and examine the bedding. Fleas. Maybe lice. Possibly both. You try brushing them off with a corner of your cloak. But they are determined, acrobatic, and well-fed. You sit upright against the wall, wrapping yourself tightly. You won't be sleeping much tonight. Historians still argue whether peasants had any concept of sleep hygiene as we know it, or whether they simply passed out from exhaustion whenever possible. There's evidence that people slept in two phases, first sleep and second sleep, with a waking period. Around midnight, used for prayer, quiet conversation, or if we're being honest, worrying in the dark. Your first sleep is now over, and you're staring at the ceiling, which is swaying slightly in the wind. The roof creaks like it's telling ghost stories. You focus on the fire, now barely embers. The warmth is fading, fast. You try not to shiver audibly. The old man snores like a bear with allergies. You glance toward the door, slightly ajar. Through the gap you see movement, just a shadow, or maybe a person. You hold your breath. Nothing, just a cat, or a rat. You hope it's a cat, but the tail was long. Eventually, you doze off again. Briefly, you dream of soft pillows and memory foam, only to be jolted awake by the morning bell tolling from the church tower. It's not even light out yet. You peel yourself off the straw bed. There's a feather stuck to your shirt. There was no feather pillow. So, where did that come from? Never mind, your back hurts, your neck is crooked, and you have the beginning of what could be a spectacular rash forming across your left leg. Good morning, medieval world. You stumble outside, blinking against the morning fog. Villagers are already stirring. Someone is milking a goat. Someone else is arguing about a missing axe. Life moves on, and sleep is something you earn, not enjoy. You scratch again. You're now the itchiest person in the 14th century. Congratulations. Someone hands you a cup of warm ale. Breakfast in bed. More like barely breakfast in mud. You drink it. It's weak, bitter, and vaguely fruity. It helps a little. The old man claps you on the back and says something about that being the best night's sleep in months. You nod, smile weakly, and try not to yawn your jaw off. You've survived your first medieval night, barely, and it only cost you several pints of sweat, half your skin's moisture, and a lifetime supply of flea bites. Sweet dreams. You've now eaten questionable stew, slept on itchy hay, and possibly adopted an entire ecosystem of fleas. So naturally, you'd like a bath. Cute.you. Wander the village, looking for, well, something. A stream, a bathhouse, even just a bucket. You pass by a boy tossing slop into a pig pen. A woman wringing out laundry with hands so red and raw you feel cold just watching her. The wind carries a whiff of something both earthy and foul. It's not you. Yet you find a wooden barrel, half filled with water behind one of the cottages. You dip your fingers in, cold, viscous. There's something floating, leaf, maybe, or frog. Either way, not inviting. A man spots you and chuckles. Bath, he asks, amused. Bit fancy, aren't you? You manage a laugh, but you are very much not joking. Mainstream historical fact. Contrary to popular belief, medieval people did bathe. But not often, and not the way you might imagine. Communal bathhouses existed in cities and some towns, but in rural areas like this one, bathing was irregular, seasonal, and sometimes viewed with suspicion. You ask if there's a place to wash. You're pointed toward the stream. Down that way, past the dung heap, someone helpfully adds. You follow their directions, holding your breath near the aforementioned pile. When you reach the stream, you're greeted by a small trickle of water running sluggishly over rocks. On the banks, a shirt drying on a branch, a woman rinsing out cloth diapers, and a man filling a jug for drinking. Multi-purpose, multi-contaminated. You hesitate, very publicly. Fringe tidbit. Some medieval folk believed that excessive bathing could open the pores and make the body vulnerable to illness. This belief grew stronger after the Black Death. Cleanliness, suspicious, dirt, protective. and if you looked too clean, you might be mistaken for someone of loose morals. A foreigner. Still, you're desperate. So you wade in, only ankle deep. It's freezing. Your feet go numb almost instantly. You splash your face, rinse your hands, scrub under your arms with a wet rag you found, probably meant for something else. You felt cleaner after long flights with no layover. You shiver. A lot. Someone passing by asks if you're ill. Not yet, you mutter. You remember too late that this water is also the village's sewage exit, accidental or not. You begin to itch again, either psychosomatic, or you've just collected a fresh batch of microscopic medieval friends. You head back toward the village, hoping no one asks what you are doing. Of course someone does. The blacksmith gives you a suspicious look. Cold day for a dip, he says. I was. Refreshing, you offer. Suspicious that, he replies, wiping soot from his arms. People get odd when they're clean. You're not imagining it. People do start looking at you differently. Not in a flattering way. A girl runs past and whispers, which, you smile nervously. Historians still argue whether medieval people genuinely feared cleanliness, or just didn't prioritize it due to limited resources. Certainly, post-plague Europe leaned hard into the idea that filth equaled safety. You get back to the cottage. The old man you're crashing with sniffs the air. You smell like mint, he mutters, offended. You didn't use mint. You used water. But here, that's enough to make you suspicious. You scratch your neck. Yep, new bites. You pull your tunic tighter and sit by the fire, trying to dry off without looking to clean. You are now fully committed to the middle path, dirty enough to fit in, clean enough not to develop visible fungi. Later in the day, you help carry buckets from the well-glorified hole, with wood panels and a questionable rope. You get a splinter. The woman next to you shrugs. Could fester. Might lose the finger. Reassuring. You catch sight of a better-dressed man walking briskly across the village square. His robe is clean, his boots laced, and his hair brushed. People bow slightly as he passes. You whisper, "Who's that?" "The steward," someone says. He bathes, but he has soap, and privilege. Soap, now there's a fantasy. In truth, soap did exist. Made from lye and animal fat. It was rough, basic, and often homemade. Not pleasant-smelling, and certainly not pH-balanced, but effective. You ask where to find some. A young boy pipes up. Mistress Brenna makes it, but she charges too much. Only nobles bother. You do not qualify. You try rubbing your arms with crushed lavender you find near the garden. It helps a little. Now you smell like a salad, and someone calls you a wood witch. You stop. Later that night, you lie back in the hay, still buggy, still itchy, and stare at the ceiling. The smoke is thicker tonight. You wonder how anyone made it past 30, with lungs full of soot, skin crawling with vermin, and not even the basic right to wash freely. You drift off thinking about hot showers, steam, and clean towels. In the real Middle Ages, you realize even hygiene could kill you or get you killed. There's something wrong with your mouth. You wake up to a sharp, pulsing throb in your lower jaw, like a little drummer is trapped inside your cheek. At first, you try to ignore it. Maybe it's just a piece of tough bread still wedged in there. Maybe you slept weird. Maybe your face is just rebelling against the entire century. But no, this is a toothache, a real one, and it's about to introduce you to one of the most horrifying aspects of the medieval world. Healthcare. You wince as you chew a bit of hard cheese for breakfast. The pain shoots up to your temple. You pause. Everyone at the table notices. One woman gives you a sympathetic nod. "It's the devil," she says solemnly. You laugh. No one else does. Mainstream historical fact. Medieval dentistry was practically non-existent. Toothaches were treated with herbal poultices, prayers. And if things got really dire, visit to the local barber surgeon, who would gladly yank the offending tooth out with a pair of iron pliers heated in a fire for sanitation. You're directed to the healer. Not a doctor, though, serve royalty. This is a wise woman, and she lives just outside the village in a cottage that leans so far to the left. You're surprised it hasn't collapsed into itself, out of sheer exhaustion. She greets you with a smile that reveals exactly 0 teeth. Comforting. She peers into your mouth, mutters something in Latin-sounding syllables, and then starts mixing herbs. You recognize, maybe one sage, maybe. The rest look like they've been scraped off a cave wall. She packs the mixture into your mouth, using her thumb and a splintery stick. You want to scream but settle for a muffled yelp. The pain spikes, then fades slightly. It's numbing. That's something. But now your tongue tastes like moldy soup and something vaguely metallic. You try to thank her. She waves you away, already scooping moss into a jar for the next patient. Fringe tidbit. Some healers in medieval Europe used dried frog skins, roasted mouse skulls, or even powdered gemstones to treat dental pain. None of these were particularly effective. Many were just distracting enough to make you think you felt better for a little while. You walk home, mouth stuffed, eyes watering. It's a strange relief, like your head is underwater and the pain is on the surface, far away. You can't eat, though, so when lunch rolls around a thick porridge of questionable oats, you just poke at it. Someone offers you broth. You slurp. It tastes mostly like boiled socks. By the afternoon, the numbness fades. The throbbing returns. Worse, the villagers tell you the next step is the barber surgeon. You get chills just hearing the name. He cuts hair and limbs in equal measure, often with the same tools. You ask how much it costs. Depends if you want him drunk or sober, someone says. Drunk's cheaper. Hurts less too. You decide to at least visit. The barber's hut is surprisingly tidy. A stool, a basin, a few stools that might be for customers or amputations, hard to tell. You sit. He examines your mouth, taps the sore spot. You nearly bite his finger off. He shrugs. Rotten. I'll pull it. No anesthesia. Just a leather strap to bite down on, and a mug of something that burns your throat. You take both. You're sweating, breathing fast. You hear the metallic clink of his tool, more like tongs than pliers. Historians still argue whether medieval surgery was barbaric, or simply the best available under harsh conditions. Some accounts describe skilled practitioners with a strong understanding of anatomy. Others tell stories of people who died from infected blisters. The barber approaches. You panic. Maybe later, you mumble, mouth still full of moss residue. In fear, he shrugs again. It'll only get worse. Might spread. That's right. In the Middle Ages, a simple infection in your tooth could travel to your jaw, then your bloodstream, and then congratulations, you're dead. From a cavity, you stumble out of his shop, clutching your face. You sit under a tree, trying not to cry. A child offers you a piece of licorice root to chew. Mama says it helps, he says. It does. A little. Or maybe your nerves are just fried at this point. Back at the cottage, you rest near the fire, jaw swollen, face flushed. You skip dinner. No chewing allowed tonight. The old man pats your shoulder. Could be worse, he says. Could be the pox. You nod. It could be worse. But somehow, that's not comforting. You sleep poorly again. The pain is sharp, constant, and cruel. You dream of dentists, in clean white offices, numbing gels, and soft chairs that recline. In the morning, your face is swollen. You look like someone stuffed a turnip into your cheek. The villagers avoid eye contact. The old man tells you, gently, that maybe you should see the barber again. You go. This time, you don't resist. He straps your arms down, pours something, alcoholic, into your mouth. You nearly choke. Then he inserts the iron into your jaw and twists. The pain is white hot and instant. It slices through your entire head. You nearly black out. He yells, hold still. You don't, but it doesn't matter. The tooth comes out, along with a lot of blood. It's done. You gasp, sob, and clutch your jaw. He holds up the tooth proudly. Good root on that one, he says, like he just caught a prize fish. You nod. Dizzy, you stumble home with cotton stuffed in your mouth, and your pride somewhere back on the barber's floor. You made it. Barely. But hey, you still have most of your teeth. For now. You wake up feeling like you've lost a boxing match to a cow. Your jaw is swollen, Your pillow is damp with drool and blood, and someone nearby is loudly chopping wood like it's a competitive sport. But hey, you survived medieval dentistry, which practically makes you royalty. Or at least someone who can drink broth again without whimpering. You roll out of the hay pile, brushing straw from your face. It's time to get dressed. If only that were simple. The clothes you arrived in are now so filthy they've reached a new form of existence. They smell like old stew, wet animal, and tooth extraction trauma. But options are limited. You're lent a spare tunic, coarse, brown, scratchy thing that looks like it's been through both a plague and a barn fire. Mainstream historical fact. Most people in the Middle Ages owned 2 sets of clothes, one for daily work and one for Sunday church. Washing them was labor-intensive and often done infrequently. Linen underclothes were common when available, but even those weren't guaranteed. You try to squeeze into the tunic, which smells vaguely of smoke and someone else's sweat. The belt is a piece of knotted rope. The shoes, just leather flaps tied with string. You walk outside, stiff-legged, already itching. It's Fashion Week in 1347. The villagers glance at you. Most don't care, but a few raise eyebrows. You're wearing the clothes of a man who died last month, and some folks are superstitious about that. One child whispers, "Ghost clothes." You try to laugh. It comes out more like a wheeze. Fringe tidbit: in parts of medieval Europe, it was believed that clothing carried the spirit or misfortune of its previous owner. Wearing another person's clothes without a blessing or ritual could bring sickness, madness, or worse, suspicion. You decide to accessorize with a scarf to cover the tooth-hole swelling. It's rough wool, itchy as sin, but you feel slightly more presentable. Someone still mutters, which under their breath, as you pass. You walk through the village market. Really just a few carts, and some tarps, spread with potatoes and onions. A woman's selling used socks. You do not investigate. A man offers a cloak for 5 silver pennies. You own 0. He glares when you ask about layaway. Historians still argue whether peasants were truly drab or simply practical. Clothing dyes existed, sure, but bright colors were expensive and easily faded. Most villagers wore muted tones, browns, grays, earthy greens, and layered for warmth more than style. Suddenly, a man stumbles past you, clutching a chicken and yelling about stolen rainwater. The chicken is squawking. His tunic is bright yellow. That's unusual. Someone nearby spits and says, "Show off." Another mutters, "He'll be fined." You learn quickly that standing out is risky. Flashy clothes suggest you've got money or worse, that you're pretending to. Either will get you punished. Peasants had sumptuary laws to worry about, rules that dictated what you could or couldn't wear based on your class. Velvet, illegal; fur, reserved for nobles; silk, forget it. You spot a group of travelers passing through merchants, judging by their coats and boots. They wear layers of wool, trimmed with fur. One has a small dagger that glints in the sunlight. Children watch them with awe. A few villagers scowl. You feel painfully aware of your patchy tunic and dirt-streaked legs. Then comes the real danger. Laundry day. You're handed a wash tub and shown the communal washing spot near the stream. It's basically a giant mud bowl. You stomp the tunic in the water, then beat it with a wooden paddle. Someone tells you to use soap rattan, actual plant for lather. It barely bubbles, but the smell is faintly grassy and not unpleasant. You look up just in time to see your borrowed underclothes floating downstream. You chase after them, slipping into the water, fully clothed. People laugh. A dog barks. The day is ruined. You slosh back up the bank, soaked and shivering, holding what used to be dignity in one hand and someone else's pants in the other. A woman offers you a spare shift-along linen underdress. You wear it. It's baggy and a bit sheer in the wrong light. Children giggle. You don't care. That evening, as you sit by the fire, in clothes 2 sizes too big and 3 shades too wet, someone hands you a comb. You pull it through your hair. It snags. Something moves. You stop. The man shrugs. Lice. You'll get used to them. Great. You reflect on how much you miss elastic and zippers, and the ability to choose your outfit without fear of being fined, shunned, or declared a heretic. or cold, or bitten. You scratch your arm and watch the fire dance. Clothing in the Middle Ages is not about expression, it's armor, it's identity, it's survival, and it's uncomfortable enough to make you long for nudity, if that weren't also a crime. You roll over in your straw bed and try to ignore the fact that the tunic is now doubling as your blanket. You smell like soapwort, smoke, and mild regret. You've officially gone full medieval. You're starting to get the hang of village life, sort of. You eat what you're given, sleep when it's dark, scratch constantly, and try not to make eye contact with anyone holding a chicken or a pitchfork. But today, you make a mistake, a simple one. Really, you insult a noble. It happens like this. You're walking near the edge of the manor grounds, staring at a tree stump and wondering if you can sit on it without catching another bug-borne disease. A man on a horse rides by. He's wearing a fur-trimmed cloak, shiny boots, and the kind of smug expression you only get when everyone in a 5-mile radius legally has to bow to you. You don't bow. You nod. A modern nod. Casual. Friendly. Harmless. Big mistake. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval Europe, strict social hierarchies dictated behavior. Nobles demanded respect, often by law. A peasant failing to show deference could be punished, beaten, or imprisoned. The noble reins in his horse, eyes narrowing. "Did you just nod at me?" he asks, his voice like cold gravy. You attempt a clumsy bow, halfway between respectful and "I dropped something." It's too late. He dismounts, points a bejeweled finger at you, and says, "This one lacks manners. Take him to the reeve." You don't know who the reeve is, but you're certain you don't want to meet him. Within minutes, 2 men arrive. They grab your arms. You don't resist. Resisting gets people burned, hung, or made into cautionary tales. You're hauled to a wooden building that serves as the village hall, court, and occasionally, storage shed. The reeve, a wiry man with deep-set eyes and a quill behind one ear, listens as the noble explains your heinous crime, failing to show the proper respect. The room smells like wet parchment and fermented disappointment. He turns to you. "Well, I'm new," you mumble. "Not a defense," he says, already scribbling on a piece of parchment. "But we'll be lenient." Fringe tidbit. In many villages, minor offenses were punished not with jail time, but with fines paid in kind grain, eggs, ale, or livestock. If you couldn't pay, public humiliation was the next best option. You were sentenced to stand in the stocks for 1 hour. Not the worst fate, but not great, either. You're marched to the center of the village square. The stocks are waiting, wooden, splintery, and damp. A child is currently playing inside them like it's a jungle gym. He's removed before you're inserted. Your head and hands are locked in place. You can't move. You can't scratch. And, oh, the itchiness multiplies by 10. When you can't do anything about it, people walk by. Some ignore you, others smirk. A few kids throw things, not hard, not cruelly, but with that mischievous aim only children possess. A turnip hits your shoulder. Someone throws bread. It's stale. Hurts a little. Historians still argue whether punishments like stocks were effective deterrents or simply public theater. What's certain is that they were designed not just to punish, but to humiliate, to make your shame visible, memorable, and itchy. You spend the next hour reflecting on your crimes. Modern manners, clean fingernails, the audacity to make eye contact with nobility. A dog lies down next to you, possibly out of sympathy, or maybe it thinks you're furniture now. Eventually, the reeve returns. "Done," he says, unlocking the mechanism. You stumble out, neck sore, hands numb, dignity flattened like a pancake under a cartwheel. You're given a choice. Pay your fine in eggs or service. You don't have eggs, so you're assigned to help patch a thatched roof as repayment. It's not glamorous. It involves balancing precariously on damp wood while stuffing straw between reeds. You nearly fall twice, once on purpose as you climb. Down, the noble passes by again. This time, you bow so low your spine cracks. He nods approvingly and rides on. You're learning. That evening, the old man at the cottage pats you on the back. "First run in with the law?" he asks. "You handled it well. Didn't even cry." You smile weakly. Fringe side note: in some parts of medieval Europe, legal systems were surprisingly complex, with village juries, oaths of compurgation, where people swore you were innocent, and trial by ordeal. You're lucky you didn't end up holding a red-hot iron bar or being dunked in a river to prove your honesty. You spend the night in your usual hay pile, thinking about how many invisible rules govern this place. The way you walk, speak, gesture. Everything here is a code, and you're just starting to understand the first few lines. You fall asleep dreaming of a world where a nod is just a nodant, not a crime. It's harvest time. You're awoken before dawn by the clang of a bell and the enthusiastic yelling of a man who seems to enjoy shouting up more than any person should. Outside, the village is already stirring. People shuffle toward the fields, half asleep, tools in hand, and hunger in their eyes. You join them. Someone thrusts a sickle at you, and suddenly you're farm labor. Congratulations. Mainstream historical fact: in the Middle Ages, harvest season was a major communal effort. Villages came together to bring in crops before weather, rot, or bandits could take their share. Workdays were long, sometimes sunup to sundown, and relentless. If you didn't contribute, you didn't eat. The fields stretch out before you like a scene from an overworked painting. Rows of wheat swaying in the breeze, muddy paths cutting through trampled grass, and a scarecrow that looks alarmingly like your reflection after 3 days without proper sleep. You're assigned to a line of workers cutting wheat. The sickle feels awkward in your hand. You bend, swing, miss, again and again. An old woman beside you mutters something in Latin or possibly a curse and takes your place to show you how it's done. She moves like the wind. You follow, clumsily hacking at stalks with all the precision of a toddler with safety scissors. Your hands blister quickly. Your back starts aching. The sun climbs higher, and you start to sweat through your only shirtwell, the borrowed one that smells faintly of goat. You stop to stretch. Mistake. A man with a stick taps your leg and points back to your row. Number. Breaks. Fringe tidbit. Some medieval peasants used songs to coordinate the rhythm of their labor, especially during repetitive tasks like harvesting or threshing. It helped pass the time and made sure no one accidentally chopped off a finger. Someone begins singing. It's tuneless but rhythmic. You join in, mumbling the words. It works, sort of. At least until a bee flies into your face, and you nearly slash your foot in surprise. You laugh. No one else does. This is serious business. Around midday, there's a break. You gather under a tree with the others, passing around a jug of ale and some cold barley cakes wrapped in cloth. They're dry, gritty, and weirdly crunchy. Probably gravel again, but you're so hungry you eat like it's a feast. Then comes the threshing. You're led to a barn where bundles of wheat are laid out on the floor. Your job is to beat them with a flail, a long stick attached to another stick by a leather hinge. You swing, pound, repeat, until grains scatter everywhere. Dust fills the air. You sneeze. A lot. Historians still argue whether medieval agricultural methods were inefficient or simply limited by available technology. Either way, the work was backbreaking, time-sensitive, and utterly essential. After threshing comes winnowing, tossing the grain into the air so the wind can blow away the chaff. It looks poetic when someone else does it. You try once. The wind changes. Grain rains into your face. A child nearby laughs so hard they drop their apple. By evening, your entire body feels like it's been wrung out. Your fingers are raw, your shirt is soaked, and your legs feel like they've run a marathon in chainmail. But the work isn't done. You help carry sacks of grain to the manor's storage barn, and that's when the real lesson kicks in. The majority of this grain, it's not yours. It's the Lord's. You get a tiny share, barely enough to feed a family for the winter. The rest is taxed, tithed, or stored to be sold. You helped grow it. You harvested it. And now you're watching it vanish into someone else's granary, one man whispers. We keep some hidden, buried in jars behind the mill. Another shakes his head. Too risky. The reeve finds it. We're done for. Fringe tidbit peasants, often engaged in quiet forms of rebellion, hiding food. Faking crop counts. or gleaning extra grain after the official harvest. It was illegal, but sometimes the only way to survive. You walk home at dusk, dragging your sickle, clothes stuck to your skin with dried sweat and flour dust. Someone hands you a bowl of stew and a hunk of bread. You eat without tasting. Your fingers shake. Your eyelids drooped out. The old man at the cottage claps you on the back. Not bad for a first day. Tomorrow's barley. You nod. Then freeze. Tomorrow, you assumed harvest was a one-day ordeal. Foolish. You limp to your hay pile, collapse, and lie there, staring at the ceiling, unable to feel anything from the neck down. Somewhere in the night, someone's baby cries, a dog barks, and you dream of wheat fields, flails. And that one be that, ruined everything. You now understand something deep and unsettling. In the Middle Ages, food doesn't come from the market. It comes from your spine, your sweat, and your sacrifice. Every bite is earned, or taken, and you're only halfway through the season. Another dawn, another aching body. You've begun to suspect that medieval sleep isn't meant to refresh, it's just a brief intermission between pain and more pain. You shuffle outside, still chewing last night's bread in your sleep, and someone thrusts a shovel into your hand. Today, you're digging a ditch. Mainstream historical fact, aside from farming, medieval peasants were required to perform a variety of tasks for the local lord known as corvée labor. These might include road repair, fortification work, ditch digging, and hauling firewood, often unpaid and without warning. Apparently there's a drainage issue near the grain storage, and you, lucky new face, get to help fix it. You follow a group of villagers to the edge of the field, where the ground is soggy and smells like fermented socks. You're shown where to dig. Then you're left to it. The shovel is crude. The ground is packed clay. The sun is already warm, and your arms are already jelly from yesterday's harvest work. You dig anyway. You scrape. You sweat. You mutter. Eventually you strike a rock and nearly lose a toe. A woman nearby offers you a pickaxe the size of a toddler. You thank her. She laughs. Don't thank me yet. You begin swinging the pick. It bites into the earth like it's chewing through your soul. Progress is slow. Your hands blister. Again, your back protests. Again, a man next to you sneezes blood into a rag. No one reacts. Fringe tidbit. Chronic illness was so common among peasants due to malnutrition, parasites, and constant labor that symptoms like fatigue, coughing, or rashes often went unnoticed or were considered normal. You pause to drink. From a leather flask someone passes around. The water is lukewarm and tastes faintly of dirt, which makes sense because it likely was stored underground. Still, you drink it gratefully. You're learning not to ask questions about what's in your mouth. Suddenly, a shout. Someone's found something in the earth. Everyone gathers. It's a human skull, likely from an old burial site or forgotten battlefield. A few people make the sign of the cross. One man spits for luck. The reeve arrives, examines it, shrugs, and tells everyone to dig around it. Historians still argue whether peasants had formal beliefs about proper burial, or whether the necessities of survival often outweighed spiritual concerns. Some areas practiced meticulous rites. Others simply moved the bones and kept working. You're asked to relocate the skull. You hold it carefully, awkwardly, trying not to drop it. It stares back with hollow eyes, as if to say, "This is your future." You set it down behind a bush and try not to think about it. The ditch continues. It gets deeper. You now stand knee-deep in mud, with clay caked on your arms and a smear of mystery fluid on your face. You hope it's mud. No one corrects you at midday. There's bread and leeks. You eat sitting in the ditch, shoes off, toes steaming. A boy nearby asks if your feet are always that color. You pretend not to hear him. You take a moment to look around. Despite the exhaustion, there's something cooperative about it all. People laughing between grunts, swapping tools, mid-task, singing badly, yes but still singing. Misery loves company, and, in the Middle Ages, company is survival. Then the clouds roll in. A light drizzle turns to steady rain. The ditch fills. Quickly tools slip. Clothes stick. Someone drops a boot, and nearly drowns trying to find it. You're ordered to keep digging until the runoff flows properly. You are now a human gutter system by the time you're dismissed. You're soaked, chilled, and dirtier than the earth itself. A pig walks by and gives you a once-over, seemingly impressed. You head back to the cottage, squelching with every step. The old man squints at you from the hearth. "Ah," he says. Ditch day. You strip near the fire and wring out your tunic. Steam rises. You rotate slowly like a sad, peasant-shaped rotisserie chicken. Your fingers are pruny, your legs ache. Your soul files a complaint. That night, you can't fall asleep. Your muscles twitch from overuse, and your skin is so dirty it feels like you're still wearing half the ditch. You close your eyes, hoping for rest. But instead, you get visions of endless mud and ghostly skulls whispering about the futility of labor. Fringe fact redux. There's a theory that many medieval laborers, particularly in wetter climates, suffered from what we'd now call trench foot, even without war. Constant exposure to cold, wet conditions led to infections, numbness, and, in severe cases, gangrene. You wake up multiple times, legs cramping, jaw sore again, and vaguely worried your feet might be turning into boiled turnips. You check. There. Just purple. For now. And yet, in the quiet pre-dawn hour, with the fire crackling, and the lice at their peak activity, you realize something important. You've survived another day. A muddy, back-breaking, soul-crushing day, but a day nonetheless. You're still here. You're still medieval. You're woken this morning not by the bell, or the shouting man, or even the smell of someone reheating cabbage stew for the third day running, but by music, not modern music, of course. No earbuds, no speakers, no bass line drop. This is lutan flute stuff, drifting faintly from the village square. It's oddly cheerful. Considering your usual wake-up soundtrack is barnyard screams and someone coughing up something ominous, you shuffle outside, half-dressed and half-conscious. Villagers are gathering, faces brighter than usual. Children are chasing each other with ribbons. A woman is wearing a flower crown. Something's up. Mainstream historical fact. Medieval villages often held feast days tied to the Christian calendar, seasonal events, or local patron saints. These celebrations were brief reprieves from the monotony and misery of peasant life, and one of the only times people could legally slack off. Today is St. Bridget's Day, you're told. You have no idea who she is, but frankly, you'd show up for St. Toenail if it meant a break from digging, ditching, or being accused of sorcery. You're given a flower sprig to pin to your tunic. Now only mildly muddy end pointed toward the square, where tables have been set up with food. Not just bread and stew, but roasted meat. Actual meat. Someone must have slaughtered something important. You approach cautiously. A woman hands you a meat pie. It's hot, flaky, and smells like it came from heaven, via a greasy back door. You bite into its rabbit, maybe, could be pigeon. You don't ask. Then someone pulls you into a circle dance. Fringe tidbit. Communal dances were common during festivals, often accompanied by bagpipes, fiddles, or instruments that sound like someone stepping on a goose. These weren't refined, courtly dances, but stompy, spinny, possibly dangerous peasant dances that doubled as both celebration and cardio. You stumble through the steps, spinning, clapping, tripping over your own feet. The music speeds up. A man with suspiciously few teeth plays a fiddle like it owes him money. You're dizzy, you're sweating, you're laughing. You barely notice the reeve and a few guards eyeing the crowd. Feasts were also opportunities for tension to rise. Ale flowed, tempers flared, and every festival risked turning into a brawl or worse, a rebellion. Historians still argue whether these feasts genuinely lifted peasant morale or simply functioned as controlled pressure releases to keep people obedient. For now, you don't care. You're eating spiced apples and drinking weak ale, and no one is asking you to build a barn or haul manure. Midday brings performances. A juggler arrives with 3 balls and no real plan. A man in a hood tells Bodhi stories that somehow involve a priest, a duck, and a confused knight. A dog dressed as a monk steals a sausage and starts a chase. Children cheer. So do adults. Someone hands you a small ribbon charm. For good luck, they say. You tie it around your wrist and immediately feel 3% more magical. As the day winds on, music fades into softer songs. People begin lighting torches. The sun dips low. Bonfires are built. It's all quite beautiful, really orange light, flickering on smiling faces. Laughter echoing under the first stars. Shadows dancing across wattle daub walls. You sit near one of the fires, hands warmed, heart wearily full. A woman offers you a cup of something stronger than ale. Mead, she says. It tastes like honey left too long in a boot, but it burns in a good way. You smile. She smiles. It's a moment, and then she sneezes directly onto your shoulder. Romance is dead. Still, the evening is lovely, until it's not. The noble arrives. He rides into the square with 2 guards, surveying the crowd with the expression of someone looking for something to ruin. You shrink a little in your seat. He announces that due to poor yields last season, there will be an additional tithe collected next week. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Breadcrumbs drop mid-air. Someone drops a mug. A man drunk, bold, or both mutters something about injustice. Loud enough, too loud. The reeve hears. The noble dismounts. The guards move. The man is dragged to the center of the square. The mood shifts like a wagon losing a wheel. Fringe tidbit, speaking out against a landowner, even during a festival, could result in fines, flogging, or imprisonment. While revolts did happen like the famous peasants' revolt of 1381, most voices of dissent were quickly silenced. The man is tied to a post and whipped. 10 lashes, not deadly, but brutal. Children are ushered away. You stare at the fire, suddenly cold, despite the heat. The festival resumes, awkwardly. Music returns, quieter now. Laughter is more forced. You eat another apple, because it's something to do that night. You lie on your straw bed, full and sore and a little bit drunk. You replay the day in your mind, dancing, mead, merriment, punishment. All of it feels like part of a strange, grim tapestry in the Middle Ages. Even joy comes with a cost. Still, you admit, just to yourself, that today was better than most. You had meat. You had music. You had a moment of laughter under firelight. And in this world, that's more than many ever get. You wake up with a dry mouth, an aching head, and a faint memory of trying to dance with a chicken. Or maybe someone dressed as one. Either way, you're paying the price for your first medieval festival hangover. The morning is quiet. So, the usual clatter of buckets and arguing geese is missing. You step outside. A heavy fog hangs low over the village, muffling sound and cloaking everything in a pale, ghostly hush. And then you hear it. Bells. Not church bells. These are smaller, sharper, and they're being rung by a boy walking alone down the lane. He's not skipping or smiling. He's holding a stick with a cloth flag on top. A red one. Someone murmurs beside you. There's plague in the next town over. Mainstream historical fact. The Black Death, arguably the most infamous pandemic in history, swept through Europe in waves. Beginning in 1347, entire villages were wiped out. Some were abandoned entirely, and the fear of plague never fully left the medieval mind. The boy keeps walking, announcing the warning. Plague, in Harrowbridge. Lock your gates. Burn herbs. Pray. Villagers begin pulling children indoors. Someone starts fumigating a cottage with smoke from burning rosemary. You stand still, trying to remember how this is supposed to go. You think of masks, gloves, hand sanitizer. But none of that exists. Instead, someone hands you a posy of herbs and tells you to sniff it every time the wind shifts. You oblige, even though it smells like dried soup and barn floor. Fringe tidbit. One popular belief held that plague was spread by miasma, bad air, and that sweet-smelling herbs could counter it, hence the nursery rhyme you may know. Ring around the rosy. Yes, that one. Now it's much darker, isn't it? You're told to help prepare the town's barriers, fences, ditches, anything to keep strangers out. For the rest of the day, you carry wood and sharpened sticks. Someone posts a sign scratched in Latin warning outsiders to stay away. But here's the terrifying part. No one knows if it will work. Disease moves silently. One traveler, one sneeze, one handshake from a man who passed through Harrow Bridge last week, and this whole village could become a memory. That night, people pray, loudly. A procession walks through the village, chanting in Latin, holding torches and crosses. The church bell tolls not for a death. But as a plea for mercy, historians still argue whether these ritual processions helped spiritually or only fueled panic. What's clear is that fear spread faster than any infection. You lie in bed. You can call it that, watching shadows flicker from the fire. The old man across from you is coughing again. You try not to notice. You pull the blanket over your face. Maybe it's just the cold. Maybe it's not. The next day, a rider gallops into town. Everyone freezes. He's shouting. People scatter, as if distance can save them. The reeve intercepts him and pulls him from the horse. The message is clear. More villages infected. Number 1 leaves. No one enters. You are now under medieval lockdown. No trade, no travel. The market square closes. Everyone's expected to live off stored food and prayer. You begin eating less. Everyone does. Stew becomes thinner. Bread is stretched with acorn flour and water. People whisper about neighbors sneaking out to forage. A woman is caught trying to flee to her sister's farm. She's brought back, tied to a cart like a criminal. You help reinforce fences. Watch the tree line for unfamiliar faces. Sleep lightly. You're not sick yet, but you're living in the middle of a community, teetering on the edge of fear, suspicion, and hunger. And that might be worse. The church remains open, of course. The priest preaches about sin and wrath and the need for confession. Everyone listens. No one touches the holy water anymore. You learn about flagellants men who wander from village to village, whipping themselves to atone for the world's sins. You see one pass through town, shirtless, back bleeding, eyes wild. Children cry. Adults don't stop him. Fringe tidbit. The flagellant movement gained popularity during times of plague and famine. Some were seen as holy. Others were feared as spreaders of heresy or disease. Days pass. No one dies in your village. But every sniffle gets a second glance. Every cough becomes a cause for alarm. The man in the next cottage over hasn't come outside in 2 days. His wife says he's resting. No one believes her. You sleep lightly now, a knife under your hay-stuffed pillow, not out of violence but fear. What happens if someone panics? If desperation breaks loose? If the plague gets in? You've never been more aware of your own heartbeat. And yet, strangely, you find yourself cherishing the mundane, the scrape of a wooden spoon, the sound of chickens at dawn, the way the fire crackles just before it goes out. You learn to be quiet, to be still, to wait. That's the true lesson of plague season in the Middle Ages. Survival isn't about strength. It's about patience, luck, and learning not to breathe too deeply. You do what they did. You light your herbs. You pray, even if you're not sure to what. And you hope. The wind changes. That's the first thing you notice. It carries a sharpness that wasn't there before, a thin, metallic chill that slides under your tunic and whispers of something coming. People stop what they're doing. The chickens go quiet. Even the dogs sense it's something shifting in the fabric of your fragile little village. Then the bell rings. Not the church bell, but a smaller one, the warning bell. 1 ring. Pause. 2 more. Someone is dead. Mainstream historical fact. Death was a constant companion in the Middle Ages. Between war, famine, disease, childbirth, complications, and accidents, life expectancy was low, and the concept of a natural death was almost rare. Every passing was both expected and feared. You follow the sound, footsteps crunching over frost-kissed grass. It's the man in the cottage across from you, the one whose wife said he was just resting. She kneels outside, weeping, her hands covered in something too dark to be wine. A priest is already there, muttering last rites over a figure you can't see. No one approaches. The villagers form a respectful but nervous circle. Someone crosses themselves. Another backs away. It's not that people don't care, it's that they're afraid to care too closely. Because grief, in this world, is a risk. Fringe tidbit. Many believed that spirits lingered after death. Mirrors were covered, bells rung, and doors opened to let the soul pass out. If the rituals weren't done properly, the dead might return it's angry or contagious. The body is wrapped in cloth, no coffin, just a shroud and a prayer. A few men carry him to the edge of the woods, where the cemetery lies simple mounds, mostly unmarked, just stones and memories. You're asked to help dig. The soil is hard, cold. Each thrust of the shovel hits something: roots, rocks, frozen layers of time. Your arms ache before the hole is even knee-deep. The others are silent. One man hums softly, a tune so old, it probably predates the alphabet. You've been here long enough to know you can't ask if it was plague. You just don't. The burial is swift. Dirt falls. The priest speaks. The wife sobs quietly, gripping a piece of her husband's tunic like it's the only thread holding her to the world. By midday, the village changes. No more wandering. No more idle chats. People stay indoors. Curtains close. The market remains shut. Food is shared more discreetly now, handed through partially opened doors. You help with firewood. It's a safe task. Quiet. Solitary. You walk into the woods with an axe and return with branches you can barely carry. The repetition comforts you. Chop, stack, repeat, until your thoughts go quiet. Two historians still argue whether medieval communities were desensitized to death or deeply traumatized by its frequency. Evidence suggests both. They had rituals for everything, yet grief still cracked through like ice over a thawing pond. That evening, the wife visits your cottage. She's calm now, numb, maybe. She offers you a bundle of herbs. He always picked these when he was well, she says. You take them, not knowing what to say. Inside, you place them by the fire. They smell like thyme and ash. That night, you hear something. A whisper, a cough. You sit upright, ears straining. Nothing, just wind, then a creak, the cottage door, but no footsteps. You wait, every nerve alert. Still nothing. Fringe, superstition. Some believe that the newly dead returned home. Once more before moving on, often through an open door or window left ajar for that purpose. Forget to leave one open. The spirit might get stuck, or stay. You check the door, it's closed. But the herbs she gave you are smoldering, curling smoke toward the rafters. You open the window, just in case. Sleep comes slowly, fitfully. You dream of fields full of graves, of hands reaching up from the soil, not in horror but in longing. You wake with a tear on your cheek and no memory of why. The next day, the village holds a small memorial. Not for him specifically, but for all. The dead that year. A candle is lit for each name. Yours is not on the list, obviously. But somehow, you still feel like a ghost. A child sits beside you during the ceremony, their tiny hand gripping yours. Mama says you came from far away, they whisper. Are you staying? You don't know what to say. Are you? Could you? Because somewhere between the digging, the aching, and the constant brush with mortality, this strange, cold, bristling world has started to feel familiar, not comfortable but known. You squeeze the child's hand. I think I might. Later, you return to your chores. You patch the roof. You sweep the hearth. You light the fire and tend to the chickens. There's comfort in routine, even in a place where everything can change with the toll of a bell. You hang the herb bundle over the window. It rustles softly in the breeze. Maybe it means something. Maybe it doesn't. But tonight, the wind has changed again, and this time it carries the faintest scent of relief. You exhale and sleep without fear. For now. It starts with a rooster. You've grown used to the sounds of village life: coughing, clanging, the occasional shriek when a goose decides it owns the road. But this morning something's different. There's a liveliness in the air, a spark of movement you haven't felt since before the plague warning. You shuffle out the door and immediately regret it. The sun is glaring off a patch of frost, and you step in something squishy and definitely not snow. But still there's laughter. Real, unforced laughter. Coming from the village square. You follow the sound. Mainstream historical fact. While the Middle Ages are often remembered for their brutality, periods of joy, renewal, and even frivolity were essential to survival. Spring festivals, saints' days, and marriages offered moments of light in long stretches of dark. In the square, people are gathering again. Not for a feast this time, but for a wedding. Apparently, the Reeves' daughter is marrying the blacksmith's apprentice. You barely know either of them, but in a village this size, no one is left off the guest list. Everyone is expected to witness it. And you, as the mysterious newcomer who helped dig graves, thresh barley, and almost died in the ditch, have apparently earned a front row spot. You're given a scrap of clean cloth to tie around your waist, for luck, someone tells you. Or maybe to cover the stain on your tunic. Either way, you're starting to look festive. The priest performs the ceremony in Latin, occasionally forgetting names, but no one minds. The couple exchange garlands of herbs instead of rings. The bride wears a crown of woven ivy and dried daisies. It's lovely, in the way only something handmade and slightly crooked can be. Fringe tidbit. In many parts of medieval Europe, marriages weren't always formalized by the church. A spoken vow, witnessed by the community, was often enough, especially among peasants. The legal part was more about alliances, land, and livestock. After the vows, the feast begins. Yes, another one. But this time, it's warmer, safer. People linger around the tables, sipping weak ale, nibbling at dried fruits, even breaking out cheese someone had hidden for just such an occasion. You suspect the cheese predates your arrival. There's music, again, and someone pulls you into a circled dance that quickly devolves into people hopping in the wrong direction and laughing too hard to care. A goat joins in. No one questions it. For the first time in weeks, you forget how badly your boots fit. You forget about the itching, the aching, the plague, the grave digging, the ditch water. You just exist. Someone grabs your arm. It's the blacksmith, himself grinning with soot on his face. You danced like a drunk duck, he says. Then he hands you a slice of something that's half bread, half cake, and all joy. Historians still argue whether medieval weddings were community events or private affairs. What's clear is that in small villages, everyone had a role, whether as witness, helper, or the poor soul, responsible for keeping the pigs out of the pastries. You help serve food. You carry water. You rescue a chicken from under the table. You even try to sing one of the wedding ballads, though the lyrics are mostly about laundry and lost sheep. Somehow, it still works. As night falls, someone lights a fire in the center of the square. Not for warding off spirits, or warnings, or rituals, just warmth. A child sits next to you, offering a piece of honeycomb. It's sticky, she warns. You eat it anyway. She's right. Your fingers are now permanently bonded to your face. Later, the bride throws her garland. It lands squarely on your head. Laughter erupts. You try to take it off, but someone shouts, "Next wedding." And suddenly you're part of a joke you didn't mean to start. You don't mind. Back at the cottage, you collapse into your straw pile, sore from dancing, and full from food that didn't taste like desperation. The old man nods at you from his corner. You looked almost happy today, he says. Careful, it's catching. Fringe detail. Medieval people often believed that moments of excessive joy could attract misfortune because too much happiness was suspicious. The wheel of fortune turns quickly, after all. Today's laughter could become tomorrow's sorrow. You think about that as you stare at the dark ceiling beams. Smoke from the fire curling upward in slow spirals. Maybe joy is dangerous. Maybe you shouldn't feel this light. But you do. And in a world where grief lurks like a wolf at the edge of every field, that lightness matters more than you thought. You fall asleep with honey still on your lips, garland, leaves in your hair, and the faint rhythm of lute strings echoing in your dreams. Somehow, you've lasted this long. Somehow, you're still you even with lice and bad shoes and dirt permanently embedded under your nails. Maybe, just maybe, you're starting to belong. By now, you've stopped checking your reflection in puddles. There's no point. You know what you'll see, a face weathered by sun and soot, lips chapped by wind, and eyes that have started to mirror the quiet watchfulness of everyone around you. You're not just surviving anymore, you're adapting. And today, you're summoned, not by the reeve, not by the church, but by the manor, mainstream historical fact. Medieval manors were self-contained hubs of power and control. The lord of the manor not only owned most of the land, but often had legal authority over the people who worked it. His word could be final on disputes, punishments, even marriages. You're told to report to the manor house alone. Your first reaction is alarm. Your second is, confusingly, excitement. Is this, progress? The manor looms over the village like a brooding older sibling, fancier, colder, and a little too aware of its own status. You walk up the gravel path, boots, scuffing stones, and wait outside a heavy wooden door. A steward answers, looking you over with visible disappointment. Follow. Inside. Everything smells of wax and damp wool. Tapestries hang on the walls, faded and dusty, but still showing off scenes of battles you're fairly sure didn't happen like that. You're led to a study where the lord is, that noble is seated behind a desk, looking tired but impeccably dressed. He nods. Once? You're the one who fixed the roof and dug the ditch. Yes, you nod. Carefully, he gestures to a stack of parchment. I need someone literate. Ah, the plot thickens. Fringe tidbit. While most peasants were illiterate, some acquired basic reading or writing skills through monastic connections, trade work, or sheer luck. Lords often exploited these individuals for record keeping, inventory tracking, or copying documents. You admit, cautiously, that you might be able to read. He hands you a ledger and watches. You fumble a bit. Your medieval Latin is shaky at best, but you manage to decipher the column headings. His eyebrows rise. You're hired. Or at least, not dismissed. Your new task: help the steward update the manor's inventory of grain, livestock, and tithes. It's tedious, but indoors, and clean. And miracle of miracles, it doesn't involve blisters. Historians still argue whether upward mobility was technically possible for medieval peasants. There were rare cases: scribes, stewards, even reeves, who rose from obscurity, but they were exceptions. Most remained where they began, bound by custom, land, and birth. Still, you've entered a different circle now. For the next few weeks, your days are split. Mornings still spent with the villagers mending fences, helping with laundry, pretending you know how to thatch a roof, and afternoons in the manor, scribbling ink onto brittle parchment, trying not to spill candle wax on any feudal tax documents. You're a curiosity. To the villagers, you've become the one who works with the lord. To the steward, you're the outsider who knows letters. To the chickens, you're still mostly a walking threat. Your hands begin to soften just slightly from less digging. You develop a callus on your writing finger instead. Your back still aches, but it's a different kind of ache, and somehow, it feels like growth. And one afternoon, the steward asks if you'll assist during the the village's semi-annual court session, when disputes are aired and justice is meted out. You agree, because why not? The courtroom red. The large barn fills with villagers. You sit beside the steward, holding a quill. The reeve announces cases. A man accuses his neighbor of stealing apples. A woman claims her husband's goat isn't actually a goat, but a demon in disguise. You are instructed not to write that down. A boy is fined for throwing rocks at a chicken, though the chicken in question seems unfazed. Fringe detail: medieval justice systems combined oral testimony, oaths, and local custom. Trials were more theatrical than evidential. In many villages, personal reputation mattered more than facts, and a clever tongue could outweigh a weak case. You record the outcomes: fines, apologies, and in one case, an agreement that the demon goat be monitored closely for further infractions. As the session ends, you realize something: this community functions chaotically, often absurdly, but with its own logic. These people have built something out of hardship and habit, and you are now, in your own weird way, part of it. That night, you walk back through the village with a small bundle of bread and cheese gifted by the steward. Children wave. An old woman offers you a pinch of salt for luck. Even the goats seem less judgmental. You sit outside the cottage, watching smoke curl from chimneys. Your straw bed waits, but you linger. It hits you. You've lasted through hunger, punishment, disease, and feasts. Through cold rain and colder stairs. You came from a world of screen taps and microwaves, and over-the-counter ibuprofen, and now you know how to bake bread on a stone and keep chickens from pecking your toes. It's not triumph, but it's survival. And here, that's more than enough. The sky breaks open with rain. Not the polite kind that taps gently on your roof like a lullaby, but the heavy, determined kind. The kind that wants to soak through everything you've ever owned, and then ask if you've got a backup tunic. It's been 2 weeks since your unexpected promotion to semi-literate ledger assistant. And the village is shifting into that murky middle season, no longer full winter, not yet spring. Mud is everywhere. The ground squelches with each step. And your boots are now just damp socks with ambitions. You spend the morning checking on thatch repairs with the old man. Roof leaks like a sinner's conscience, he mutters. You hand him the bundle of straw you've collected, and try to ignore the icy trickle down your spine. Mainstream historical fact, in between seasons, peasants had to constantly repair, patch, and fortify their homes. Water damage, cold drafts, and rot could turn minor neglect into disaster. Roofs were redone several times a year by hand, from scratch. Inside, the cottage smells of wet wool and onion broth. You hang your tunic by the hearth, and the smoke begins doing that medieval thing where it refuses to leave through the chimney and just ... settles. Your eyes watered later. The steward visits. He doesn't knock, just ducks through the doorway, bringing with him the scent of leather and damp parchment. The Lord's moving on, he says. His household's traveling north for Lent. We won't need you at the manor for a while. It's not a dismissal, but it stings. You'd gotten used to sitting at a desk, even if it was next to a stuffed hawk, and a painting of a saint that looked vaguely constipated. You nod. He leaves a loaf of better bread behind, though. That's something you spend the afternoon helping. Butcher a pig. Fringe tidbit. Slaughtering animals was a communal event, and no part of the animal went to waste. The stomach became sausage casing. The hooves were boiled for glue. The blood thickened into pudding. It was grisly, yes, but economical. You hold the bucket. You try not to look too closely. The pig does not enjoy the process. You hum softly, to yourself, something from before, something modern. A pop song nobody here will ever hear. The irony doesn't help. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers were truly desensitized to violence, or simply compartmentalized it. Either way, you don't flinch anymore. That might say more about you than them. By evening, you're wiping your hands on grass and trying to pretend the smell of boiling organs is somehow nostalgic. A girl offers you a turnip with salt. You accept it like a sacred gift. You walk home, slow, watching the clouds part. The sky is bruised, but soft. A few stars appear, like shy guests, at the edge of a party. You sit on the cottage step and eat your salty turnip like it's cake. The old man joins you. You've lasted longer than I thought, he says. You laugh. So have you. And that's when you feel it. The weight of everything you've done. All the moments stitched together, wading through mud, surviving plague scares, dancing at weddings, flinching under the Reeves glare, copying grain counts, patching roofs, holding buckets, hauling firewood, sleeping on straw, dreaming of microwaves and waking to lice. You're not just playing peasant anymore. You've become one. The scary part, it doesn't feel like failure. It feels like ... grounding. Maybe this version of Yutha, one who can gut a fish, who knows how to quiet a nervous cow, who can walk miles in broken shoes without complaint, stronger than you thought. Fringe. Detail. Some time travel theories propose that even with knowledge from the modern world, you'd struggle to survive the past without proper adaptation. Your biggest strength wouldn't be your intelligence, it'd be your willingness to learn, unlearn, and endure. You lie down for what feels like the 100th time on that scratchy straw, watching embers flicker and crackle like tiny dying stars. You listen to the gentle snores around you. The wind is calm. No one is shouting. No bells ring. For the first time since you arrived. You don't wonder when or if you're leaving. You just let the darkness wrap around you like a well-worn cloak. You're still here. You made it. And now your eyes begin to close. Slowly. Softly like shutters drawn against the cold. Outside, the wind fades to a whisper, and the moon drifts high above the thatched rooftops, casting silver patterns on sleeping fields. Your body, once aching, now feels weightless. Every limb loosens. Every breath deepens. The crackle of the fire becomes a lullaby, low and steady, wrapping around your thoughts like warm wool. You remember the rhythm of footsteps on frozen ground, the warmth of shared stew, the softness of a hand-woven garland resting lightly on your head, the laughter, the labor, the learning, all of it blending, now blurring like a painting left in the rain. You no longer worry about what comes next. You don't need to. Here, in this little world of straw beds and stone hearths, time slows. The past no longer bites. The future doesn't demand just this quiet moment. You are still. You are safe. And as the candle flickers for the last time tonight, casting one final glow across the wooden beams and earth-packed walls, a hush settles deep into your chest. The world can wait. Tonight, you sleep like someone who belongs.